Hello everyone, Richard Carlton here. Welcome to another awesome day. I am the creator of FMTrain.tv and I welcome all of you people here, all the awesome people that normally visit us, and including any lurkers. Carol, I'm thinking of certain lurkers. Carol, welcome to the fold. We do get emails from lurkers periodically. They're like, I'm secretly watching everything you're doing, but you don't know I'm there, right? And so that's Carol, right? You hear this like Hannibal Lecter kind of voice coming through the computer. Yes, I'm there, but you can't see me, right? So kind of cool when the lurkers, it's like space, like Klingons decloaking, and suddenly it's there in front of you. You're like, hey, how are you? So welcome everyone. It's awesome. Today's Friday. We're going to do some awesome stuff. We got Jonathan Ray here, who is one of our senior engineers. He's a very, very talented individual. Does a lot of work for projects. He actually just completed some project work for some customers, and he is available if you need some help on some project work, which is pretty cool. So feel free to reach out to us at support at RC Consulting if you would like to get some help with him. Support at RC Consulting, and then we will get that triage and forward off. Some people say they want a senior engineer, but then they really need like inexpensive coaching. So we try to like triage the requests coming in before we dispatch them out. Here we go. Everyone ready for this? You can all recite it with me. Ready? 1, 2, 3. This broadcast is brought to you by FMTraining.tv, where you get the latest and greatest in on-screen, on-demand video entertainment, as long as the entertainment has to do with FileMaker. And then you can learn a lot about FileMaker and be awesome yourself and help your customers be awesome, right? So there you go. So if you're interested, if you're a lurker like Carol, then if you would like to purchase one of these, obviously you can go to the FMTrain.tv, hit the bundles button. But if you send us an email, I'm also put a link here live for everyone. It's a $50 off coupon. So I will do that today while Jonathan's talking. So if someone else is presenting, then I can help kind of run interference. So all right, so Jonathan Ray, are you kind of there and kind of semi-ready?
I am here and ready to go.
So so this is charting today. Is that what we're doing? We've done charting before, so how is this different than every other charting thing we've done?
I am pretty excited about this because this is a neat little technique that I think will come in handy. So let me explain what you're looking at first before diving in here. So you're looking at a very basic stock screener. So if you have a stock portfolio out there and you're one of these kind of stock nerds that like to look at the past performance of the stock, or what they call ticker, and you want to see a chart of the historical closing prices or the market price on a stock, you would normally go to a website that's a stock screener website or something. But if you're really into it, you could build your own stock screener. This is a very basic version that you're looking at with a chart that charts a particular stock across time.
All right, cool. Every once in a while, your audio, if it gets a little slurry, I might have you repeat, but it was mostly pretty good. We have that pretty good there. So go and continue, Jay.
Okay, great. So as you probably know, when it comes to a stock, they have a closing date every day that the stock market is open, which means that in order to chart that data with FileMaker natively using records, you would have to have a record for every day for a particular stock, right, in order to chart it across time, which means that if you have 1,600 different stock records times a record for every day that that stock has been in existence, you end up with 5.7 million records. At least that's what I have right here. And this is queued up from some stock data website that I loaded. But that is a bunch of data. And usually when we deal with FileMaker databases, you're not dealing with 5.7 million records. It's a bunch. And the big issue here is that it makes your data huge. Right now, this little database with 2 tables in it is over 5 gigabytes. And all I'm trying to produce is this chart right here for each individual stock. So we came up with a better way of doing this, and I'm pretty excited about that. Before I move on, though, Richard, did I discuss
Yeah, it's fine. I'm actually watching air traffic control here with everyone. If you have questions, definitely let me know.
So just to recap, the goal here is to demonstrate a better way of charting, at least in this example, a stock over time without creating 5.7 million records in order to make that happen. So in this example, and I've sent Richard this example file, you'll be able to download it. So this file will be available for you just with 2 records, so you have a way to know how to do it. I didn't want to provide all this other data for you. And, just 2 records is fine though. So we're looking at a Walmart record. This is the Walmart stock ticker here. And you see here I have 2 examples. One, the chart as a Google chart, and I'll go into that. And the other one, the chart as a FileMaker chart. Okay, so if I go all dates, I believe this works. Give me a second. Yeah, this is the same chart that you're seeing over here. So you can do it natively in FileMaker or with Google Charts, but you can see I just reproduced the same exact chart, right? But there is no historical data table. That 5.7 million records went to 0 by the technique I'm using right now. So it got rid literally of almost 5 gigabytes of data using that this technique. So it's pretty neat. And the way we did it is by using JSON instead of native FileMaker records. And what JSON is, it's not a name of a person like Jason. It's a data format that many people use today. So instead of storing that historical records as FileMaker records, we're storing it in a field. So this is the data that comes from the stock screener site that I loaded the data with, and you can see it's just a big, compacted, crazy-looking string of text. But there is order to the madness here, okay, a method to the madness, and this is what JSON looks like. All of this compacted data is reporting the date that we're talking about, the open price, the high price, the low price, the close price, and then it goes into the next date and so forth. But that's the type of data that we were storing in this file as FileMaker records. So I had to split out all of this data into records individually and then chart it. But I figured out a way to chart it using this JSON string or block of text itself, which is pretty cool. So this is how it works. We are, of course, using a web browser here, okay? And I'm going to go into how it works on the Google chart because I think that's a little bit better, I guess, because doing it with a FileMaker chart, I think we already know how to do that. And if not, we have other videos on that subject. So I'm going to go into how to do it with a Google chart.
Yep, I totally agree. Totally agree.
Okay.
Doing Google Chart here, I think, is interesting because people will. In fact, we need to put that in the title, Google Chart, because search. That's a good search term. All right, cool.
Yeah. So here is Google's API documentation, and what an API is a way. I mean, in layman's term, the easiest way I can explain it is a way for you to interact with a service online, send data to it, get data back, get some sort of result back. Google is opening up a back door to a charting service that allows us to interact back and forth with it and display the result in a web viewer in FileMaker. And what we're looking at here on their website is their detailed documentation on Google Charts. So just by searching on a search engine, Google Charts documentation, you'll be brought to this. And you can see there's all sorts of neat things you can do. You can do scatter charts and geo charts by nation or country or state, column charts, and a whole bunch of stuff. But what we're looking at today is a line chart, okay? And all the documentation you could possibly want is here. And you can see how this chart here looks very similar to the one here, okay? And the documentation, the actual
Whoops, Jay dropped off there.
code
Okay,
that is
Jay,
all provided here.
Jay, go ahead and repeat that last sentence because you just
Okay.
dropped off there. Try that again.
Okay. Okay. So all the code that you need here is provided by Google in their documentation, and they provide very good documentation as far as that's concerned. In the world of APIs, I really like Google's way of documenting things. So it's very helpful. But what you're looking at here is an HTML page or code. And the trick is incorporating this type of code in FileMaker and not displaying static pieces of data, but having this little piece here be reflecting FileMaker data. And so that's what we're doing. We started with something from Google's documentation, copied that over, and then made it work with FileMaker data. And I'll show you what I mean here. So I'm going to kind of pop the hood, if you will, and go into layout mode. And this is a web viewer. If I double click on it, this is the HTML from Google's site, but we've added a couple things to make it work with our FileMaker data. Okay, and so really it's a copy and paste from Google, and then we're putting in the stuff that we need in order for it to display the data that we want it to display. Okay, so we won't go into every single little piece here, but if you've ever worked with a web viewer before, you're kind of familiar with this type of thing. It looks like HTML or web code, and you just want your FileMaker data to interact with it a bit. Okay, so you can see here that this right here, that's a FileMaker field, right? That's the data that we're wanting it to display. Some of this other stuff is just cosmetic, like this down here. We're saying we want the font to be Calibri, want it to be 24, and so forth. We want the title to be market price, and so forth. And so that's all static text stuff that we hard code in, but the dynamic text, the thing that's constantly updating when we tell it to refresh, is this FileMaker field right here. Okay, so when you get this example file, you can kind of tear it apart and see how exactly all this stuff works. But I'm going to show you what this field is and how that drives that. Okay, so I'm going to go back for 1 second to this Google documentation. The way Google works is their data is formatted like this in these brackets, and it has to be absolutely exact. If you're off by 1 comma or 1 single quote, the entire thing will not work. So Google is very picky and unforgiving. So if the last value in your data doesn't have a comma, the entire thing will be broke, and it's not going to give you any error messages. You don't really know why it's broke, and so you have to fiddle with it a little bit until you get what you want. All right. So we are compiling our FileMaker data into what's called an array, a Google array. And that's what this looks like here. Let me show you. Okay. In chart data, let me...
Okay, so I'm going to interrupt.
This was my little popover.
Don't lose your spot, Jay. So John also has a question. How will this performance be on a 5 gigabyte database if I ran it on standard Cloud 2? Basically, it's just it's a T2 medium or large that's up in the cloud. So how does this work on a hosted solution, Jay?
Sure. If you did it natively with 5 million records, over 5 million records, if you're just displaying text, it will still be kind of slow. It's not going to be terribly slow, but it will be extremely slow if you try to do it with like a calculated field or something. If it's just FileMaker text, the chart will display, fairly fast. You might have a little bit of a spinning wheel, but it's not too bad. The main concern of mine is the actual size. You don't want a database that's 5 gigabytes if you don't have to. and this is a way around it.
Yeah. So keep in mind, we have a lot of previous sessions, John. I don't know how long. I think you've been around intermittently. So the rub is with this is that if you park it on the server and you say you park something on the server and it's slow, then you go through some basic optimization and getting rid of summary fields and unstored calcs and things like that. It's still slow. Then you want to have this thing generate as much on what we call PSOS, where the server runs the script itself. And so I'm pretty sure you could actually generate this. What you have to do is once it's in, the trick here is once you have it in the web viewer on PSOS, then you need to basically copy that and paste it into a regular container field, if that makes sense. And then that way the server would have cached and created the data for you, if that makes sense. I don't know, Jay's really going to get into that because that's a whole separate conversation. We just beat that up about 2 weeks ago with Nick Hunter. But the idea is to be able to tell the server to do it for you. It would do it as fast as this. The trick is just that once you generate this web viewer, we need to move the web viewer into a container. And so I know there are ways of doing that. In fact, that came up the other day, right? So I think there's actually an insert. One of you guys were talking about this. Maybe let me go over to the Discord here. I'm not actually looking at Discord at the moment. Let me see. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. So there was a conversation about. Yeah, it's not on right now, but we had to talk about Jay. There was an insert. You can take the contents of a URL and insert it into a container. I'm pretty sure, or into a field. And so I'd want to test it with that, but that's kind of how I would go down the road with this on the server if you wanted to go down that road, right? So once again, of course, take it on the server, see how the performance is, and then go from there. So I'll let you take back over, Jay.
Sure. So what we did here, this is a regular text field. This is not a calculation field. And this is going to store the array that I'm talking about. So let me go back into browse mode. I'll show you what that looks like. This is the format here that Google needs. And that's what we want to give it, okay? And so based on our date range, if we have a date range here, right now it says all dates, but if we put in not all dates, and it's getting from 1/4/2016 to 2019, and you can see here then that this is a different array. It starts with this date in 2016 and goes to the end there. So the script, this little refresh script, is what drives that, and that's what I'm going to get into next. Okay, so I'm going to go to Script Debugger and show you how this works. I'm not going to dive into extreme detail, but I want to give you the overview, and you can reverse engineer this file at your leisure. So I'm going to open up the script itself. It starts out by saying if either of these are empty, okay, the date fields are empty, then halt script. So it does some checks, okay, to see that some values are already there. All right. So when we come down here in the script, it says if the checkbox all dates are checked, then it sets a couple variables here, or it sets a variable. All right. And then down here, maybe I'll just walk through the script and show it to you in the data viewer.
They would like to see that in the debug and data viewer. They would love to see that.
Yeah. Okay. So let me open up the data viewer and show you like what is actually being set. Okay. And I think that I can just delete it. No? Okay. Okay. Let me step through this here. So I come here. I'm trying to step through this. All right. It's going a little slow for some reason.
Yeah, it's not fine. You can talk about it, talk through it. It is dragging a little slow, but that's fine because you are.
Okay. So I want to get down here. 1 second.
I wonder if it's because you have. Is there a lot? Listen, Jay, is there a lot of data over here? I mean, because here's the thing. Whenever
I'll put it on the watch.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing is that anytime you show these items here, it slows down FileMaker quite a bit. I've never seen it slow down that much, but you're chewing a lot of data, right? So
It's a lot of data. Yeah. Okay. So I'm only going to show it when I actually
yeah, but Jay, we got 30
do a
minutes.
variable.
Jay, there's 30 minutes. There's no
Okay.
rush. These people would all rather see this. They're not here for the marketing sales job. They want to see the guts of this baby running, right? At least I
Okay.
think you do, right? Any guys on Forks on Discord say guys and gals. Discord, yeah. Tear it apart, yes. No, yes.
Okay. So I set these two variables. I just want you to see what they look like first. 1, 2. Okay. So date A formatted, date B formatted. This is the format that Google uses. It's year, month, day. And that's kind of becoming a standard, that format, starting with the year. And so this provides me my range that I'm looking for. I want everything between date A and date B in this format, and I'll show you why I'm setting those variables in a second here. Okay?
Yep. So you know, everyone, the comments were tear it up, tear it apart. We want to see it. We're here to learn to learn how it works, right? So we're not they're not here for the wax job on FileMaker. They're here for the open the hood and tear the engine apart. So okay.
Sure. So this if statement, and I'll dig into this after I just run the script. I want to show you what it does first. This if statement here says if there is no data between these two dates, then return a dialog saying, hey, you need to select something else, and then halt script. Okay, it's not going to try to chart data that doesn't exist. Else if there is, let me see. Oh, okay. This is saying that the start date wasn't even in the list of JSON, so there is no date that starts with this. Sometimes, if, say, for instance, you chose a weekend date, stock markets don't operate over the weekend, and so it's going to give you an error saying you can't start with that date. You need to choose another one. The same thing goes for the end date. If it doesn't exist, say you chose something like in the future, like 2023, well, of course, that's not going to be in the data because we can't see into the future. That'd be nice, but we can't do that. And so it's going to give you a dialogue there, an alert dialogue. All right, so now we move on. If it passes all these checks, meaning if there is a start date, if there is an end date in that block of JSON, then set this particular variable. And this is going to churn because we're in the data viewer. But what it did is it went through and did what amounts to a find on the block of JSON. And it grabbed for us everything within those two dates. See, you see here, 2016, 1/4. It started with that date that it found and ended with the end date that we chose. And it got everything in between in the format that we need to extract the data we want. So that's why that set variable is so important. Okay, now at the end of the script, we set 3 fields that Google Charts needs to display our data. And that's in that calculation. These 3 fields are referenced. One is Google Chart data x-axis, y-axis, and then the actual array. And so let me go ahead and do that. Okay, the x-axis is, where is it? X-axis is here. Okay, so these are all the, it gives us the year of each of these values. And that's what Google needs to display. And then the y-axis, let's go ahead and set that and see what it returns. Let's pull this up. And for every one of those corresponding year values, there is a closing date value that we just extracted, okay, using a calculation. We just extracted all of that information from that filtered JSON block that we retrieved. That's really what Google needs to display this stuff. And then finally, we store or set that chart array that Google needs as well. And that looks like, and I'll show it to you here, it looks like this. And basically all it's doing is it's combining the values from the x-axis with the y-axis. Okay, so on the first date of this year, that's the closing date. The second date on this year, that's the closing date, and so forth, all the way to the end. And this looks a little weird because it's not in a date format, it's a year, but that's what Google needs to display it how we want it to, okay? And then it closes a popover if it's open, and this is important, it needs to refresh the web viewer. So on the web viewer, it's named web viewer, and to refresh it, we put refresh object, and we supply the name. So if the chart has changed any since the last refresh, it'll reflect that refresh. And that's it. Okay, so that's it on the overview. That's how it works. But let me dig in now, I guess, to what those actual functions do, like how we're extracting the information. Okay, so here's a couple things that, I mean, I'm using let statements in here, and this goes beyond the beginner type of skill set. And so if you're not there, you may have to tear this file apart and really figure out how this is working. But let me give you some insights to it. So first of all, we need to format the two dates like we needed to, the year dash month dash day format. And that's all it does, is it grabs the date, the start date that we put in, and formats it how Google needs it. Okay, and that's it there. So it captures the year, the month, the day, and then puts it in a format that Google likes. All right, so that's how that works there. And the same is true for the end date too. Those, believe it or not, are the easiest functions in this script. It gets kind of hairy from here. So kind of get ready. At the end here, if we have selected two dates for a date range, then what we need to do is grab everything within those two dates from that JSON array. And this is how that works, all right? So we grab the start date, which is in that year dash month dash day format, and the end date, the same thing, okay? And then it does a couple things, like it adds or subtracts some like brackets and commas in the way that Google needs it. And as I explained before, Google is very particular on even one character being off. If it has an added comma or a comma that needs to be there, a couple of these things are formatting issues that they need.
Jay, repeat the sentence again. Just go back and trade that sentence again, okay? Because you
Sure.
chopped up. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so when I said at the beginning of the whole broadcast that Google is very particular on what format things need to be in, if there's an added comma or a comma that needs to be there and it's not, the entire web viewer, it'll just be blank. And so a couple of these things that I'm doing here, it's making sure that commas are there, that need to be there, and so forth, okay? What I'm doing here in the final result is up here, we are capturing the start position of the first date and the end position of the last date, and then we're trying to get everything in the middle and then put two brackets around it. And then that's what we're doing. So FileMaker handles blocks of text a lot better than other things. Like a block of text and doing things like position and substitute and pattern count, middle, right, left, those types of things, FileMaker is extremely fast, even in the script engine. Okay, so know that if you can get away from doing some other methods, like a custom function that does some sort of recursive function, if you can get away from that, the better. And so I'm using a lot of native FileMaker stuff like position, middle, etc., getting the exact piece of text I need, and then wrapping it with a start bracket and an end bracket. And again, this is the exact format we need for Google. Okay, so that's a
I
little
have a question.
bit.
Did you work on this with Nick Hunter a little bit, or was that the other demo? Because you had two this
No,
week.
that was the previous demo from Tuesday.
Yep.
So I take all the blame and credit for this one. All
Okay. All right. Great.
right. So I'm going to hit cancel there, and then this is the very critical piece of information here. These three set fields make the whole thing work, really. So I'm going to do the first one, and this is a for lack of a better word, a recursive function. Okay, so what it has to do, it has to go date by date in that block of JSON code and format it exactly the way that Google needs. So first of all, it needs to grab, let's see, this is x-axis and y-axis, I called it. It needs to grab the year for every single date that's in that block of JSON and then put it in the way that Google wants it. It needs to be, with a start bracket and an end bracket and that type of thing. And then the next function on the list gets the closing price from that block of text. The last one puts those two together and combines them in the way that Google wants it to be displayed. And so this recursive function is pretty similar to something we looked at in the previous live stream I did on Tuesday. You'll see some similarities here. And basically what it's doing is it's determining the amount of dates that we have to loop through. And down here, when we do set recursion, we're saying loop through, just like we're doing in a script where you have a loop and an exit loop if. The same thing applies here, where we're saying basically loop through the stuff that we're looping through, each date in the JSON, and exit if that's the end. There's no more. So you don't get caught in an infinite loop. That's kind of the fail safe there. You could get away without doing a set recursion, but this is the fail safe. What we're doing here is the I stands for iteration, and I could probably have written that out like iteration, but it tells us what loop or what iteration we are currently on. So say we have 300 days that we're looping through and trying to extract the year for each one of those. We need to keep track of what place in the loop that we're at. Okay, so every time it does this loop here, it's numbered by 1. So you see down here at the end, after it's done looping, it says, okay, if we just evaluated iteration number 1 and we got the date for that, then up the number to iteration number 2. And then it goes through that loop again, and it goes through it again, all the way until you get to the end, say number 300. And then it stops and returns your array for you.
Okay, so I'm going to interrupt. I want you to cover something from Tuesday, I think it was. So Scott was asking a question. He says, for the set variable, dollar is a FileMaker variable, so the ampersand or at signs are the JSON variables. So they're, can you explain your shorthand there?
Yeah, and this might be confusing. I might start using a different way of naming things. You're right that the dollar signs represent things that we just set in the script here, right? Dollar sign date A formatted, or dollar sign filtered JSON, etc. Okay, but what I'm doing here This is just my way of naming things. When I see an @ sign, I know that this is a variable that I'm setting in the let statement. So this
Okay.
has nothing to do with
Yeah.
being in some sort of JSON format. It's just my unique way of naming things.
Okay. So, and just keep in mind that once again, for those of you this broadcast, so as I put the broadcast together, I'm going to go ahead and zoom out a little bit here, so that way, kind of put this in context for everyone. Put myself back on here. So what happens is I have a team of about 30 people that work for me, and that number kind of goes up and down. But what we do is we bring specialists in, like Jay or Nick or Calvin, etc., to come in and do presentations. And what ends up happening is that unless it's written in blood, what we do is we provide the senior engineer some general guidance on commenting or documenting the way we do relational diagrams, things like that, anchor buoy, stuff like that. I don't specify or put a gun to their head that they will name internal little let variables a certain way. So you've seen Christian Olson do it one way. I've seen Nick do it another way. They all do something similar. They all notate with some sort of little character special that they know that that is a variable that only lives inside that let function. And then once that let function is done and it's released, it goes away. That variable goes away. But it's coming up with a standard on that for you personally. I'm not talking about us. I mean, you could say, hey, Rich, you should get control of those 30 staff. Make sure they're doing it the same way. I some things in life I'm going to regulate as long as they comment it. I'm good with that, and so we understand what's going on. But Jay is different than Christian, different than Nick. One of them was using a tilde or something. I can't remember who that was. And so, yeah, it's a good point. And I'm not. And so Jay's not wrong, and Christian's not wrong, and it's not wrong. It's kind of a little bit personal. Just make sure that you, the person I'm talking to on screen, have a standard for that, and you do it or follow it, and then you make little notes or comments about it. And that way, when someone else comes behind you, they kind of understand what you're doing, right? So I don't know that that symbol, that character J, is any right or wrong or more or less than anyone else's. It's just people ask the question, and the reason is that for those of you watching the training here, the live streams, we bring different people in. Some things are standardized, right? But other things not so much, right? And this is one of those not so much things. But
Right. And with in my defense here, this was made for just me personally. But you're right. If we distribute that, I probably need to comment this thing out.
Well, unfortunately, we already distributed it. So
Yeah.
TK is out of luck, baby. So yeah. So this is one of those deals where comment your code, have a consistent plan. But do what I say, don't do what I do, because I'm going to break all those rules, right? So, these guys are having fun with us. There's some good material standards on. Yeah, well, we had a whole broadcast on standards, right? So that may or may not be in that document, Andre. So we actually had a whole broadcast with Nick Hunter on that. I wouldn't get too excited about this one because I consider this fairly minor in the scheme of things. Most time people create really horrible relational diagrams, and those are the ones I get more excited about. What he would put comments in here, or more likely, is this part of a script, Jay? I wasn't watching you when you did this. Is this part of a script?
So this is in the calculation here, a set field.
Yeah, yeah. I would have commented the snot out of the script. I don't know that I would comment in here, but you could do that if you wanted. So that's the thing. Yeah. So.
And to be clear, when you do a comment in a calculation, you can do // this is my comment, or whatever you want there, and that's kind of the way you do that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've got Discord over here, then I've got YouTube, and I also have Twitch going. So awesome. Any questions from anyone here? So yeah, John Haggerty pointed out, it was like, hey, it reminds me of Fortran from 1980. I'm like, I did that in '89, and I think the concept is that once you understand programming really, and you're like really master a language, then you pretty much understand mechanically what's going on with things. I mean, like certain things like XML has benefits. It's not really a language. JSON has benefits. It's not really a language, but languages have certain benefits, right? I mean, the FileMaker Pro, the application, the source code was in Pascal up until about 10 or 12 years ago. It was Pascal for over 20 years, really out of date, never C++ or anything, right? So, and then they rewrote it. I don't remember what they wrote it into, something much more modern, I think. But, you build and you try to document and comment. So, yeah, so there's a conversation about the naming conventions and things like that, which is fine. TK, yeah, so like I said, I'm not going to beat Jay up over this too much, because if I beat Jay up, then he won't come back with another sample file, and then we'll end up having more training sessions on, you know, like what is a report and what is a field, and then all you guys would be like, well, where's Jay? I said, well, you ran him off because we demanded he write comments into his demo for you that he built. So it becomes it's an untenable position as a boss, right? So anyway, go ahead, Jay. I'm listening. I'm drinking my water here.
So to kind of segue into, you said something about a sample file, and that brings me to this next point here. So you can feel free to tear this apart, and I've covered some of the basics. I think getting more into the weeds is, the people that will be able to tear this apart will appreciate the file. But I'm excited about what I'm going to show you next here. This is kind of cool. So this is my own kind of personal use that I built a couple of years ago. All right, and so this is like a more beefy version of what I just showed you. And in the Google chart here, you're actually able to, let's see, stretch it a little bit more. Yeah, you're actually able to control the zoom on this thing. And you can see I can zoom in and zoom out on the date range just from a controller within the web viewer itself.
Okay.
And so this is just an example, just visually, of something you can do. Pretty neat.
Okay, yeah. So you're a little bit of lag there. So can you do the zoom in and out thing again for us one more time? Just show us that. Oh, we lost Jay entirely. Wow. Oh, now he's back. Jay, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, good. Yeah. So when you started talking about zooming in and out, the internet went wonky, and then you disappeared. So,
ooh, okay,
so just do the zoom thing again. Show us how that works.
Sure. So Google has what's called controllers, and let me just show you where that's at. Over here, control. Can't find it. It's somewhere.
There it is.
Controls.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it'll show you that you can do things like this, and control charts like that. That'd be very difficult to do in FileMaker. I don't even know how you do that, but because it's in a web viewer, you can do that sort of thing. So over here, I've elected to have a different type of controller. This little zoom in, zoom out thing, and so it gives you the specific date range you want from within the web viewer itself. I thought that was pretty cool.
Good. That looks pretty cool, Jay. Yeah, I'm answering another question over here. So if you want to kind of dig into that and drill through that a little bit more, if you want, that's fine.
Yeah. So I didn't release this one because the code is more complicated. It gets more complicated the more cute you want to be with something, I guess. And so the chart code I've over here, and you can see it's kind of a gnarly looking thing. Just so you know, you can do this type of thing. And there's all sorts of complex Google charting you can create. And this is just one of them where you can have a control, a separate chart, a second chart. I'm pretty happy with that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. The internet's having a little struggle here. I'm not sure what people are doing or not doing to make sure the Dropbox isn't going. I've got all my stuff shut off here. It's just the audio's a little bad, but yeah. So Jay's talking about the custom version that he built here, and the code's a little more gnarly. So, Brutterman has a question: how do you get the original data into the historic price of the JSON field? Was his question.
That's the actual service that I got the JSON out of in the first place. There's a couple of services out there that basically sell historical stock data. I don't remember the one I got it from, but there's like a dozen of them. Some of them are cheap, some of them are free, some of them aren't, but I don't remember.
Okay. Jay, I'm going to release you right now. We're going to call this broadcast over. I appreciate everyone. Thank you for attending, all right? Really, really appreciate it. All right, thanks.
All right. And thanks, everyone.